You will live with me, Barry Moose, on the Africa Daily Show. My colleagues are prepped up. Hafiz, Mami, and Epe as we delve into our discussion zone for today. But before we bring them in and we start our own parts, let's hear what Mr. Grant Bulmuo has to say with respect to assessment, his own assessments of education across Africa. Now, he is the chief executive of Neogenics Education. Listen up.
50, 60 years down the line, has anything changed? Can we say Africa has made significant progress when it comes to education? Where do we think our continent is? I'll probably look at it from the access point of view, quality and relevance point of view, and also juxtapose that with the SDG goals and goal number 4, which mandates or says or states that to ensure an inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Yes, the deadline is 2030. Has Africa made significant progress? I would say some countries have, others are still struggling. The data states that more than 220 million children, adolescents, and youth will still be out of school by 2030. That's 9 years away, and that's a significant number. That is a huge number considering the fact that Africans' current primary school enrollment rate is probably above 80%. That is true, which I think is a great improvement in the past few decades. We've made some inroads. We've recorded some good increases for 80%. We've done so well as a continent, but there is still more I think we can do in terms of increasing access to ensure gender equity and ensure that everybody across the continent and country, we have a lot of children attending school. We are told more children in Africa are now attending school more than ever before, but yet still, we still have about 20 to 25% of children not accessing school. And this is just basic education. Despite these successes in primary, secondary enrollment, in primary school enrollment, there are still some areas that we are recording unsatisfactory levels like teacher development, infrastructure, and quality and other elements as well. So there's still more to work on, and I believe that this is the time. Unfortunately, we have COVID-19 pandemic that has set in, and obviously almost like has caused a retrogression and a delay and a stagnation in our increase to the access and provision and quality of education. As it stands now in most African countries, as much as there is increase in quality, it is also true that it's only the elite and the middle class and those who can afford it actually get to benefit from high quality education. We still see the rich leaders taking their children to other countries overseas to study, and what happens? They come back to their country, Africa, to rule those who didn't have the provision of or the opportunity to access higher education. Africa has made definitely significant advances in closing the gap in primary level enrollments. I believe that, but we can say the same when it comes to secondary and tertiary enrollments. We are definitely lagging behind. We are told that only 4 out of every 100 children in Africa is expected to enter a graduate and a postgraduate institution, compared to 36 out of 100 in Latin America and 14 out of 100 in South and Western Asia. Only 30 to 50% of secondary school age children are attending school, while only 7 to 23% of tertiary school age youth are enrolled. So as much as we're doing well at the basic level in terms of access, we can say that it's true for secondary and tertiary. And happy to hear that a lot of African countries and their leaders are beginning to roll out free education at the secondary school level, which I believe is widening the net for more people who couldn't access secondary education to begin to get into secondary education. Hopefully that might help. Some still leave school without basic grasp of reading and mathematics, and that is across most part of the sub-region. Results from regional assessment by the UN indicates that poor learning outcomes in sub-Saharan Africa, despite upward trend in average learning achievements. I mean, many children are currently in school and they wouldn't learn enough, and even considering COVID-19, most of the children in African countries wouldn't learn enough to acquire even the basic skills needed to succeed and live productive lives. So there's still quite a lot to do, and I believe hopefully, given the opening of digital learning and the opportunity that COVID-19 has probably brought to the world, in spite of the death and all the pain that it's left us with, most people in the continent are becoming more astute when it comes to the digital world, and that can be a stepping stone to help Africa extend education provision across the continent.
I love Africa Global Radio.
Okay, that was Mr. Grant Bulmuo, Chief Executive of Neogenics Education, on his assessment of education across Africa. And I bring in my colleagues Epi, Mami, and Hafiz. Let me start with Hafiz. Guy.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Nice. I mean, Mr. Bulmuo has made his own, assessment in terms of education in Africa. I mean, these are people who actually are on the ground and having, direct link with, people in the education space in different African countries. Go.
Yeah, he started by, enumerating three thematic areas he would like to tackle the issue on. He mentioned access, he mentioned quality, and he also mentioned the relevance.
Right.
And in terms of access, I think he started out by giving some very encouraging numbers as to enrollment, talking about how we are actually at 80% in terms of enrollment. But these are successes we can largely credit to the basic level.
Right.
But same cannot be said at the higher level, especially, and he gave me a very grim outlook in terms of statistics, where he mentioned only 4 out of 100 are able to make it to the postgrad level. And I think that is very worrying.
Very worrying.
It's very worrying. It's a worrying development. In terms of quality, he also went ahead to talk about how disturbing it is that quality education is the exclusive preserve of the elites. Yes, you would have to be part of the upper echelons of the education system anyway before you can actually access quality education, and that's I think is something that we also need to be very worried about. In terms of relevance, he didn't really touch much on that, but then if you look at the latter stages of everything he talked about, he went ahead to mention the challenges. Talked about teacher development, infrastructure, quality came in there again. And interesting enough, he brought in COVID. COVID seems to be
everywhere. I mean, you can touch on a topic, on an issue without it,
you can't go 2 steps without mentioning COVID.
Exactly.
And, yes. In the beginning, he did mention how it has caused a lot of social and economic disruption.
Right.
But COVID seems to have also given us a new way of seeing things, where days of institutions refusing to do certain things, the excuse as the school tradition are over. So we are seeing them they are becoming more open to the use of technology in teaching. So to some extent, you can say that it has accelerated digitization with COVID, with the pandemic that we have seen. So basically, these are the areas he touched on.
Okay.
And I think we still have our work cut out for us.
Right.
Anyway.
All right. Thank you, Hafiz. Let's hear Epi on your own comment on that.
One thing he mentioned had to do with accessibility.
Okay.
The fact that we know Seychelles, for one key thing, is one of the key things is because they've given access to almost all the children there. And also, I think it's a big thing. We need to look at it. But he also mentioned the fact that the free SHs is given. It's more like
it's broadening the scope.
Yeah, it's broadening the scope and reducing the gap in that sector as well.
All right.
He made mention of the fact that a couple of people leave high school and then they leave school and they don't have skills of maths and
English.
Yeah,
right.
reading and maths. that gets you to actually question the kind of educational system
Mm-hmm.
or what is being taught. I mean, the fact that everybody goes in there,
Right.
everybody has access to it, does not mean that
Okay.
quality is the same.
Is
So
assured.
I think one thing we should be careful as governments and institutions is the fact that let's not just overdo things. Neglecting the quality of things.
Okay.
You understand? Because if we're overbedding the system,
Right.
it will reduce the quality at hand. So we need to make room and make provision as we increase more of these things.
All right, thank you, Epe. Very. I really loved your, your submission. The fact that we there's access to school. I mean, you'd go and you still cannot read and do simple arithmetic. That's very worrying. Mame.
Bye.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's an issue, eh?
Education.
Exactly.
I mean, to buttress the point you just made about you go to school and
You still cannot
you
read.
still cannot
Good
read,
English.
You still
You know,
cannot
do
and I think-
basic arithmetic.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that stems from sometimes the classes are too big.
You mean the number?
The number.
Right.
I mean, because I went to a private
private
school. We call
basic
it
school.
private, basic, like
Right.
private
Mhm,
school.
mhm.
So it's like there the numbers are quite
Mm-hmm.
small.
I mean, the teacher to raise to
the
student
teacher to student
pupil
ratio
is
like
okay.
It's okay. It's like
Yeah.
we are like 20 or 25 tops
See?
in a class.
Right.
But you go to these public schools and then it's like
Minimum is 80.
the classes are so big they even have to go to school in badges.
Yeah, I'm sure other different African countries can actually give us example. This is in our base Ghana, 80 pupils in one class.
Yeah, so I think what GS should be looking at is churning out more teachers to handle these classes.
And infrastructure as well, because he
Yes,
made mention of that. Very important.
Mean, when students went back to school,
Okay.
I saw a couple of images where the Ghana Health Service was fumigating schools and
Right.
all of that, and you could see the students sitting on the floor in a classroom that was
Yeah. I saw that.
Literally breaking
that
apart.
footage as well. Yeah, I saw that. Not looking good and not promising, not encouraging in terms
At
of how the future is going to be
all.
like in terms of education. Thank you, Mami. He also talked about countries, as we did yesterday, countries who are actually doing well in Africa. We made mention of these countries. We mentioned them, but he went ahead to give us the reason why they are doing well. Let's listen.
Well, in terms of which countries are doing great in education, I would say yes. There are some countries that are doing so well. Others are using their resources and channeling their resources into educational provision and investment. Others too are not doing much at all. When we look at the World Economic Forum research and their work on ranking of education systems, and when you look at the 140 countries they researched on, and they did a research on to look at their systems and the provision and the quality of provision and the level of skills that are being transferred, and also how children make progress in terms of their development of digital literacy, interpersonal skills, collaboration, and ability to think and also work creatively. Obviously, these are all the variables any good education system seems to or seeks to deliver. So when you look at these things and the research that was conducted by the World Economic Forum, they accessed 140 countries, including 38 African countries, and they ranked the best education system based on these scales. Countries like Namibia were ranked 100th in terms of global education system. They were 100th, but in Africa they were 10th. And when you look at Namibia's literacy level, it's quite high. It's quite high, about 88.2%. And I would say that's probably one of the best statistics when it comes to literacy in Africa. And above them we have Egypt. Egypt was ranked 99th position on the global education system, whereas the 9th best in Africa with their literacy rate 71% as of 2017. And above them was Cape Verde. But let's look at the top three. And the top three, it's amazing that the top end from the top three, you talk about the third being Mauritius. Mauritius was the third best country with the best education system in Africa and 74th position globally. and look at their provision. I mean, schooling is compulsory up to 16 years, and they put in a lot of impact in terms of quality vocational provision, and they are doing a lot. Mauritius as a country, it's so consistent in its provision, and their students are consistently ranked top in the world each year for the Cambridge International O-level and International A and AS level examination. I mean, they have fantastic provision, and they provide quality work right from pre-primary to tertiary level. And second best in Africa is Tunisia. And they ranked 71st or 71 position in global education system, and their literacy rate is 81%. Though lower than some of them, but in terms of educational outcomes based on ability of children to collaborate, to think critically, and to collaborate and communicate effectively, Tunisia is doing so well, and I think they've done so. When I compare them to Ghana, I think Tunisia got independence from France around 1956, Ghana 1957, and one would have expected Ghana to be probably doing well as well, but they are not even within the 10 top countries with the best education system in Africa. And then we have the top of it all is Seychelles. Seychelles is a very small country, and it is the only African country in the top 50 education system globally. Globally, they are 43rd, and they are even ahead of Ukraine, Hungary, Russia, and United Arab Emirates, and they are top, and they rank 28th position on critical thinking in teaching and 34th on skill set of graduates. It is the first and only country in Africa that has fully achieved the education for all goals set by the UNESCO. So that is amazing. So you can see that there are good qualities and good examples in the continent or on the continent, but such good practices are not evenly distributed. Back to Seychelles again, they have about 98.9% of the population aged from 15 to 24 literate. 98.9% literacy rate. I mean, it's so good. That's almost like everybody's literate in that country. And you can't rise above your literacy and your numeracy rate. It's important that we begin to work more on those two elements, our numeracy and our literacy. And look at Ghana. Ghana is ranked 104th in global education system and the 12th in Africa, ahead of Zimbabwe, the 12th. In terms of Africa, and Nigeria is 25th in Africa behind Rwanda, right? So there's a lot to do. You can see quite a lot of good practices across the continent, but I believe that these countries are where they are. Those doing well are where they are because they focus on the critical skills and the most relevant skills that would give children increased high chances and relevant skills that will make them more useful and make them more relevant when they leave school, because some of the countries are still latched on to old educational practices, teaching practices and subjects and curriculum that are not relevant in terms of 21st century, and they're still holding on to it. But there's a lot of modification. Many countries are looking up to European countries and other advanced countries to help them with the education and recalibrate the education. But I think the African needs to find solution within itself. Looking around, when you look at countries like Seychelles and Tunisia and other countries, I believe we can share and collaborate and work among ourselves to see how we can produce a very unique system that is relevant within our context. And I always would say that when your quality of teaching isn't good, your outcome of education will be bad, would be insufficient, will be lacking, will be lagging behind. So it is important that we look at the quality of teaching and how our teachers are developed over time. Right.
I love Africa Global Radio.
All right, and that again, Mr. Grant Bulmuo, Chief Executive of Neogenics Education, on countries in Africa who have actually done good and rated pretty good, top 10 in Africa, but he focused his submission on the top three: Tunisia, Mauritius, and of course Seychelles. And he gave us a reason why. Why these countries are actually doing well, not only the African perspective, of course, on the global scene. Hafiz.
Yes, interesting stats there. Ghana is ranked 112 globally and 12 on the African continents. Yes, Namibia has a 98.8 literacy rate.
Yeah.
Seychelles, rather.
Seychelles, yeah. Like almost everyone
is
there.
literate in that country.
Yeah.
Now, these are interesting stats and all.
Right.
You see, in trying to look at the why, the fact that Africa has 50 plus countries and our unique challenges, we have very unique challenges, and that is not lost on me. And so, in trying to look at why some are doing so well and others are not doing so well,
right.
I believe there are certain conditions that run across all these countries.
Yep.
And there are also certain conditions that are peculiar to certain countries.
Yeah.
Depending on what challenge they face in trying to, reach the goal of having not just access but then good quality education for the citizenry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can only speak to what I'm familiar with.
Right.
And coming to our base Ghana.
Right.
Now, here, I like to focus on the challenges that we face because we seem to have done a very good work in terms of access.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the quality,
yeah.
I think that has been compromised a bit. Yes, and it's due to certain number of reasons. Now, he mentioned some, and you can see these were the ones that were generally
cuts across.
It cuts across the continent,
right.
and others you can see
it's peculiar.
They are peculiar to a certain country, and so for some of the reasons I'm going to mention, you can see that there are actually they are just Ghana-based situations,
right.
and others are simply some that cut across.
Right.
Now, first of all, he mentioned the means and tools to teach. And in this part of our of the the continent, Ghana, to be specific. Now, we're in this country when a teacher went viral on social media because he was captured drawing
the computer
on the
tab,
blackboard.
Yeah.
Yes. Just so he'll be able to teach the students ICT. In certain instances, students were captured using stones and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, these are the issues that we are talking about. And these are students that are supposed to write the BEC with students that have access to good quality education.
Exactly.
That have, laptops and whatnot. And have access to 24/7 electricity.
Yeah, yeah.
And know their way around the computer like a pastor knows his way. So, how do you expect such students to compete?
Exactly.
So yes, we are talking access here, but then the quality in there is lacking. Okay, now conditions of service. Let's talk about the teachers. Now, in this country, or this might actually even cut across.
Absolutely.
The issues of accommodation.
Yeah, yeah.
It's supposed to be a regulated sector, but somehow we've seen how it seems the authorities have
Politics.
lost control of the system. Where teachers are basically they down their tools every now and then because of the conditions of service.
Right.
That is not favorable. Teachers are left to look for their own accommodation, and we know what the accommodation situation is like.
Right.
And for some of them, they decline or either accept postings to certain areas. Yes. So in fact, if you have the connects to actually get you to a place that you prefer,
you'd get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then you start, calling somebody that knows somebody somewhere. And so these are some of the challenges. And I think Mami mentioned one of the challenges in her earlier submission. The teacher-student ratio.
Yeah.
Is also another issue. In our days, we were like, 10, 15 in a class. So you had your teacher not only have an academic interest in your well-being, there's also a personal
interest. Yeah. Yeah.
So he made house calls in the form of random unannounced visits.
Yeah.
Just so to check up on you. If he sees you are lacking in a particular
subject, goes ahead to speak to your parents.
Yes,
on what's happening. Yeah.
Just to find out what exactly is going on with you.
I have 80
he
students.
Knows everything about
in
you
a class.
To the last detail.
Some you don't even know their faces. I was surprised by one of my auntie's son claiming that the teacher says she doesn't know him. He sees her on the road
in a class of about 50,
and he identified Madam. Madam's like, who are you? Madam, I'm your you know how they sometimes speak. I'm in your class.
We've all been there.
Madam denied it.
We've all been there. I taught in a particular school before, and sometimes I could be on the road and it's
Say,
then it's
say,
like
say.
and then I tell
Who are
her,
you?
like,
Who
what
I
is
know
it?
you.
Who are you?
Anyway, thank you, Hafiz. Let's hear what Epi and Mommy got to say to that. Well, let's begin with Epi.
So I think Hafiz has basically mentioned
Mm,
some of the challenges we have,
Right.
and it's very true because I believe as much as we're grading and rating these countries as having the best educational systems,
right.
we need to also take into consideration the fact that the institutions or governments that actually played huge and serious roles.
Yeah.
For Seychelles, for example, the government actually has cut a budget that they focus solely on education.
Right.
They make it a priority. So they make sure whatever has to do with like the 360 of it, provision of materials, equipment, availability of space,
Yeah.
building schools and the rest, and getting the parents to actually bring their children to school.
Right.
When you actually have all of these things, in a way, you don't actually need to go and even advertise for the parents to bring their children to school
Not at all.
because they know they are coming for a good experience. You understand? And one thing, as much sometimes we don't see the importance of having one teacher to a less number of students because they're able to really focus on. I don't want to stress on that so much because both Mami and Hafiz have done that. But I think if we do that, we'll be able to, and in a way, it will cut down on unemployment.
Okay.
We have lots of teachers who are home.
Very qualified for that
Very
matter.
qualified, and it's more like you're rather thinking of payroll and all that. No, I think we should think of giving the children the right foundation so that because in years to come they'll be the ones at the reins of power.
Okay.
What kind of people do we want to be having power?
Right.
If we don't give them an education that actually encompasses everything,
Okay.
some people know how to work in the chew and pour system.
Right.
They know how to work with what has already been done. But if you put them in a situation that it's a new ball game altogether, their critical thinking skills don't work.
Yeah.
They can't
Yeah.
think beyond the box. They're just stuck in it. And it's because of the way the teaching has been done over time.
Right.
Teaching now in certain parts do not necessarily cover the whole part of it. You understand? It's just, there was one time I had lecturers that would be like, if you write the exams, if they don't see specific keywords that were in the textbook,
You don't pass.
that
Or
means
you'd
you
be
didn't
marked
learn.
down.
You don't know. Yes, they won't pass you. So
Okay.
you're compelled to literally just go and pick
Yeah.
the keywords.
Yeah.
Like, come
And put it there.
That makes
Chew
them,
it and pour it. As
at
I
a
say,
point, it's
chew and
like
pour.
we used to call it intellectual nonsense.
Right.
Write like 3 or 4 paragraphs for them.
And then
just meanwhile, you're
just to
just
please
you just
them.
explain the same
Thing.
thing.
Right. Thank you. And I mean, he also made mention of the fact that some parts, like Mauritius, compulsory education till the age of 16. And anyway, let me bring in Mommy. Mommy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say, we have plans of like traveling to Mauritius.
Oh,
Seychelles
yeah,
just
yeah,
for
yeah.
leisure.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm thinking of going to stay.
To stay.
Yeah.
Mm. To reproduce, to multiply.
When you give birth, your child is gonna have compulsory
If
education.
the literacy rate is like 90 something,
Yeah.
then I mean,
And education is very compulsory, for
in
instance,
Mauritius, and it's free till the tertiary level.
And then vocational is one thing they focus attention more on, which is very, very important. I mean, Doctor made mention of the fact that since the inception of education, in the educational system in Ghana, it's more of like the vocational was actually a core, addition to it. But unfortunately, it hasn't been given that attention as it's supposed to be. Yeah, Mami, continue.
And then I was going to say Mauritius as well. There's free transport for all students.
See? It's making it so favorable. You even want to go to school. No, seriously.
There's this thing. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not in Africa,
Right.
but in Dubai. My sister was like, when she came back, she was like, do you know that if you were living in Dubai, you would have gotten married by now? I'm like, why? Because the government will pay you when you actually get married. When you're going to school, the government is paying for your tuition. When you get married, they give you money, and then they actually give you a house. They literally are
They're encouraging you.
facilitating and
your
ensuring
life.
that you become responsible.
But maybe
and then they make things easy for
sometimes
you.
maybe you can't blame some African government.
No, I'm not
Lack
saying we
of-
should emulate that, but
I
I'm
think
just saying.
Hafiz, real quick, so we can take the last
Yes,
part of
look,
it.
I think we've actually made great inroads in terms of access.
Yeah.
That is no doubt. Okay, but in terms of the quality, that is where
That's the question
issue
mark, yeah?
comes up because we seem to have compromised that department.
Look, you still
Look. What was it? The comprehensive sexual education that
Yeah.
they wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I think even in the submission, he mentioned that they try to remove certain irrelevant
Yes.
subjects. Now,
yes.
I think the whole idea was they considered that part of the education as relevant.
Right.
And so stakeholders decided that look, these kids need CSC at this level.
Okay.
But some way, somehow, we saw how it was met with a lot of, resistance
Right,
when,
right.
when they tried introducing it. Because, well, for some reason, it affected someone's religious...
stepping on a few toes and all of that.
And all that. So we have a long way to go, really.
All right, let's hear him talk about the surge in private education. I mean, no doubt, for out of a 10 Ghanaian parents, you ask them, I think 8 would be willing to send their kids to, if not for anything, if not for the sake of financial, issues, all of them would prefer sending their wards to private institutions. Well, let's hear him.
In terms of the private education, private education has been has been on the increase, I would say, has been on the increase over time. We've seen private participation over the years been significant and contributing greatly when it comes to the entire educational provision in some countries, especially countries where they've had an encountered war. We have seen the private sector rising up to take their place and see how they can contribute to that provision. Right, so private education. Considering the fact that 1 billion children in sub-Saharan Africa would need education in the coming decades, at least 2 to 3 decades, but with up to just 40% of our children not meeting basic literacy and numeracy targets, the continent would definitely need the input of the private sector. The private sector in most countries have contributed significantly when it comes to either teacher development, school setup, and also tertiary sector and secondary sector. We see, and even at the basic level, we see a lot of contribution in there. There's a huge gap within the education sector, and the private sector comes in to complement. Some of these private sectors are not for profit. They come in and they are part of the solution, and we should see them as such. The private sector already contributes significantly to education, almost about 25%, as is estimated, of the provision in the private in the continent is by private sector, and I believe that. In the next few decades, government needs to come up with strategies that would let the private sector provide a hand-holding approach and a hand-holding strategy to help the public sector also develop and increase and leapfrog to the levels in terms of the quality of provision and the relevance that the private sector brings in. And so I believe that it's important that there is a very good relationship ongoing. Many countries, you will see the edtech, private sector edtech, working with the government sector, the private sector bringing in the technology, bringing in the quality, and working hand in hand with the private sector, with the government sector, to ensure that the gaps in provision, in quality, is addressed. And I believe for the state schools, where they are lagging, what makes the private schools really stand out is the leadership, which I believe the private schools can lend to the public schools. The leadership, the supervision, the monitoring, the evaluation, and then the planning as well. They have very strong and practices that I believe they can bring in to support the public sector. And I believe that in that collaborative effort, we should see the public sector also increasing and developing to catch up with their global partners.
I love Africa Global Radio.
Okay, so trying to bridge the gap, between the private sector and the public sector. Clearly, like I said, I mean, out of 10 parents, you'd find out that almost all of them, I believe, would want to send their kids to the, private school and everything because they think they do better. They have actually they give much time to their students. They provide the students with all the basic learning, teaching and learning materials and all of that, and also critical thinking. It's not just about go and learn and pass, but they try to understand. They try to let the people and the students understand what is it about when you're supposed to solve a problem, how you go about it, and all of these things. I think he made mention of other important points right there. Hafiz.
Yes, interesting submission there. Public-private partnership.
Yeah.
Some would say marriage. So basically, that was what he was advocating for. It shouldn't be about competition.
Absolutely.
The private sector should be seen as a partner to complement.
Not a competition.
Exactly, to complement the efforts of government.
Right.
And he actually did go ahead to mention certain things the public sector could learn from
the private sector.
From the private sector. Talk about leadership, supervision,
planning,
and all that. Remember, I think that was yesterday or the day we spoke to. We listened to Dr. Ibrahim.
Doctor, okay.
Yes. He mentioned certain parts. I remember in my submission, I asked why we are seeing the private sector doing so well at the basic level, but then the public sector that contains, apparently that has, the best of teachers, or but somehow we don't see that translating to good education.
Right.
And I think in his submission he has addressed that concern of mine.
Right.
Yes. But one thing we also need to understand is that yes, the public sector can also pick up issues of dedication from the private sector.
True.
Yes. And speaking in terms of dedication, I don't think it's something that is good, especially in the public sector. We see it every now and then. But thankfully, I'm glad that they've introduced this licensing exam for teachers.
Yeah.
Because previously, you saw certain individuals get into the teaching space simply because they didn't have anything to do.
Yeah.
Teaching was essentially a stepping stone to something else.
And to a meet, huh?
Exactly. So they simply wanted to get somewhere. So
okay.
It's the reason they found themselves in the teaching space. And so you have individuals, characters in there that are not really passionate about
the job. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we see some of these things in the public sector, and I think yes, that partnership is something we need to encourage.
Okay, Epi, real quick, so we can jump.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I believe that government institutions should actually work hand in hand with private institutions and create the opportunity where they can actually tap into the resource of these private institutions, so they can better the education system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mami.
Did she talk about public institutions tapping into private resources or private institutions?
I mean,
when I'm saying like resources not like their funds or anything. Resources like the mental, the system, the way they teach, their approach, the books and all that.
Okay, well, what would you say to that? Yeah, I mean, if you're having difficulty understanding
has a lot to say.
her points, so she had to think about it thoroughly.
No.
But yeah.
I'm not, I mean, I believe government should invest more into education.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to school, if I'm a child and I'm going to school and I'm going to sit on the floor, where's the motivation?
No, not at all.
Going to school.
I wouldn't even go.
I really saw a documentary where they have to walk, cross a river, take something, hop on something before they can
canoe
get to
or whatever,
school.
just
So
to get
I feel
you
like
to school.
More
So frustrating.
investment should be done, should be put into the education sector.
Right. I mean, considering the fact that in the next decade, 1 billion, people are supposed to be enrolled in school, and definitely the private sector would definitely be of help in terms of enrolling some of these students and peoples and everything. And then, I mean, ensuring that there's that quality, teaching in terms of the kind of students and people that we...
I think that that all boils down onto the workload. Because if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching about a class of 80,
you'd want to mark only 20 and mark the rest tomorrow
you can decide
or at
to
midnight.
mark all of them, but that teacher to students relationship
It's
won't
very
be there.
necessary.
It
It's
won't
very,
be
very
there
necessary.
because then even controlling the class
Is a problem.
Is a problem.
Sometimes they just
'Cause
sleep.
I remember, like I said, I went to a private school and then
Right.
I had this boy.
Yeah, she's rubbing it on my face. No, it's fine. She says this every now and then. Eh?
No.
You see? God has exposed you.
And then there was this boy in my class, right? Who
Right.
never came, who didn't like coming to school.
Okay.
If you see Nashiru in school, then it means his mother or both his parents
Ah, in
had
school.
to drag him to school.
Oh,
And
wow.
I knew his house, so every time he wasn't in school, I
You were
led
the-
the teacher to the house.
Sorry,
But if it was-
frontliner.
But if it was a public school, I mean,
Oh, no,
the teacher's
nobody would
already
care,
tired.
yeah.
I mean, since they don't even notice the student don't come.
Yeah,
But
because of the
since
number.
we are small in a
Yeah,
class.
because
if
of the
one
number,
person is not in
sometimes, like,
class, they
yeah.
know.
Thank you guys for joining us and for contributing. We really appreciate, and well, for listening as well, guys. Thank you. You can also comment and share your thoughts with us when you get to see the video on Facebook. Let's